Robert, restart the motors. Robert, what's the matter?
Your spaceship will sink in the ash. The beautiful Earth woman will die.
All right, Steve. We're in orbit. Robert is in the rear control center.
Number 10. Jetmobiles. The future was personal. Here's a problem nobody at NASA had solved by 1962. Once you land on an alien planet, how do you actually get around? The crew of Fireball XL5 had already figured it out. Personal flying platforms called jetmobiles, sleek, single-rider, jet-powered sleds that carried the crew across alien terrain and through the corridors of Space City alike. Not giant spaceships, not clunky ground rovers, the personal jet ski of the space age, and they looked impossibly cool doing it. Someone in the writer's room looked at rockets, robots, and a modular spacecraft and said, give them personal jets too. That instinct for future stacking, piling tomorrow's possibilities on top of each other until the ceiling disappeared, is why this show still holds up. If deep dive TV history is your thing, subscribing means you get the next one the day it drops, not 6 months later when the algorithm decides you exist.
Now, Robert, it's no need to get all steamed up.
Number 9. Space City, the island that launched worlds. Before Sild had its helicarrier, before any floating fortress became a franchise staple, Fireball XL5 had already built one in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Space City, headquarters of the entire World Space Patrol, was a gleaming, gantry-bristling launch pad on a floating island, and it absorbed punishment the way great characters absorb adversity. Repeatedly, without losing its shape. Alien forces, saboteurs, subterranean invaders. Space City kept the lights on through all of it. The base wasn't just backdrop, it was practically a crew member with a real estate problem. Setting your last line of defense on a floating Pacific island is a geographic choice that functions as a thesis statement. It says, whatever comes at Earth, it has to go through here first. That's not set design, that's character.
3, 2, 1.
Number 8. Robert the Robot. He had feelings, actually. His head was transparent. You could see every gear, every blinking circuit, every mechanical thought happening in real time inside that dome. Robert the Robot was the crew's mechanical co-pilot and one of the most quietly radical characters on early 1960s television. In an era when robots in science fiction were either menacing killing machines or dumb metal servants, Robert was a colleague. He provided critical data, he assisted in dangerous operations, and he exhibited something the show treated as genuine concern for the crew, loyalties, reactions, what any reasonable viewer would recognize as care. That transparent head was pure design genius. It made his inner workings visible, and somehow made him feel more knowable, not less human. Most characters hide what's happening inside them. Robert literally couldn't, and he still managed to be the most reliable person on the crew. If Fact 4 hits you right, remember Robert was helping build the technique that made it possible, one episode at a time.
Steve, you're almost there.
Number 7. A galaxy full of foes. Most adventure shows of the era gave you one villain, one reliable nemesis in a cape or a uniform, showing up on schedule to cause trouble and leaving on schedule to lose. Fireball XL5 refused that arrangement. Week after week, the crew encountered entirely different threats. New alien races, space pirates, subterranean civilizations with their own grievances and their own territorial logic. Among the most memorable were the Subterraneans from Planet 46, beings who lived beneath the surface and had developed a dangerously specific interest in Earth's topside real estate. They weren't monsters. They were rivals with a plan. That rotating gallery of antagonists did something important for the audience. It reinforced that space wasn't a simple place with simple enemies. Every sector held something new. Every mission was genuinely uncertain. The writers had to keep inventing fresh threats, which meant the audience never got complacent, and neither did Colonel Zodiac. That's the difference between a show that recycles tension and one that earns it week after week.
She is out there in the rocket that will be launched against Earth.
Number 6. Shot in black and white, set in color. Consider the constraint for a moment. a show about the spectacular, colorful expanse of outer space. Alien planets, star fields, gleaming silver spacecraft, filmed entirely in black and white. That was the reality of early 1960s television. Color broadcasting wasn't yet widespread. Most households still ran monochrome sets, and the budgetary math simply didn't support the upgrade. So Gerry Anderson's team built these extraordinary miniature worlds, intricate alien landscapes, glittering space cities, engineering that held up under the closest camera scrutiny, and rendered every inch of it in shades of gray. The remarkable thing is that it worked. The contrast, the lighting, the careful model work all translated beautifully to black and white. And viewers filled in the colors themselves the way audiences have always filled in what imagination asks them to. There's a reason the production held up under scrutiny that color television would have invited more harshly. Black and white is an unforgiving medium for detail work, and Anderson's team met it every time. Constraint has a way of clarifying what actually matters, stripping away what the eye would otherwise forgive, and forcing the craft to be genuinely good rather than merely adequate. Sometimes a budget ceiling is just a creative decision that hasn't introduced itself yet.
Good. Now, Steve Zodiac.
Number 5. The spaceship that split in two. Fireball XL5 wasn't one vehicle. It was at least two, and that distinction mattered every time a mission went sideways. The nose cone of the spacecraft was a fully detachable, independently operational vessel called Fireball Jr. When the mission required something smaller, faster, or more maneuverable, a planetary landing, a close reconnaissance run, getting somewhere the full ship couldn't fit, Colonel Zodiac detached Fireball Jr. and went in solo. The main ship waited. The smaller one dove into the problem. As a design concept, this was ahead of its time. Modular spacecraft, detachable command vehicles. Ideas that showed up decades later in serious aerospace engineering discussions. In 1962, a puppet show was already working through the logic. For kids watching, that detach sequence was pure escalation. The moment Fireball Jr. separated from the hull, you knew things had just gotten genuinely serious. Gerry Anderson understood that good vehicle design is good storytelling.
34, 33, 32.
Number 4. The word they invented for what they were doing. Here's where the show's place in television history becomes genuinely permanent. Fireball XL5 was the first Gerry Anderson production to carry an official label for its distinctive technique. And that label was a word Anderson's team essentially invented from scratch: Supermarionation. A portmanteau of super, marionette, and animation, the term captured what separated these productions from every puppet show that came before. The puppets were more articulated, more expressive, more precisely engineered. They featured sophisticated electronic lip sync systems that matched mouth movement to pre-recorded dialogue with an accuracy that still holds up on screen. The miniature sets were built to a level of craft that rewarded the camera rather than hiding from it. Supermarionation wasn't just a production technique. It was a brand promise, a signal that what you were watching operated at a higher standard than anything labeled a puppet show had any right to. The term stuck because the product justified it. Every Anderson production that followed, Stingray, Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, built on the foundation Fireball XL5 certified with that name. You were watching a trademarked revolution and had absolutely no idea.
Don't worry, Steve Zodiac. Unlike Earthmen.
Number 3. Dr. Venus. She was always the smartest one in the room. Every great crew needs a great doctor. The crew of Fireball XL5 had Dr. Venus, and the record on her needs setting straight. With a French accent, an iconic white beehive hairstyle, and a medical expertise that made her genuinely indispensable on dangerous missions, Dr. Venus was the show's resident space medicine authority. She didn't stay aboard while the men handled the action. She went out. She diagnosed the alien, treated the injured, and kept the crew functional under conditions that would have ended most missions before they started. Her alien companion, Zuni, a peculiar, warmly absurd creature of extraterrestrial origin, added a layer of personality that no other crew member quite matched. In 1962, capable and warm simultaneously was not a given for female characters on television. Most shows of the era offered one or the other. Competence that read as cold, or warmth that read as decorative. Dr. Venus managed both without apparent effort in a show otherwise full of square-jawed heroes and metal-domed robots, and she did it while treating alien biology in zero-gravity conditions that the writers invented fresh each week. She was also a puppet, obviously. But so was everyone else on that crew, and she still managed to be the most composed person in the room when everything was going sideways. That's a kind of quiet excellence that tends to outlast the show that produced it. And it's why she's remembered with genuine respect, rather than as a period artifact.
Robert, restart the motors. Robert!
Number 2. Colonel Steve Zodiac, the archetype generation of heroes. Take a careful look at what Colonel Steve Zodiac actually was, because the fingerprints he left on science fiction are still visible in every space commander who came after him. Calm under pressure, led from the front, piloted the craft himself rather than issuing orders from a chair. His uniform was practical and iconic in equal measure, and his demeanor under alien threat was the television definition of the word unflappable. Every space franchise that followed, in every medium, across every generation, owes something structural to the template Zodiac helped establish. He wasn't just a hero, he was the blueprint. Here's what makes it genuinely interesting. He was a puppet. A marionette with a square jaw and a flight suit, voiced with authority, written with competence, designed to project heroism to a generation of children who had just watched the first real astronauts leave the atmosphere. The timing was not accidental. Gerry Anderson created Zodiac at the exact cultural moment when the idea of the space explorer was becoming real, and handed children an idealized version of that figure at precisely the moment they needed something to aspire to. What that did, quietly and without announcing itself, was give an entire generation a shared definition of what leadership looked like under impossible conditions. Not shouting, not heroic speeches, just steady hands, clear eyes, and the willingness to be first through the door. That's not nostalgia talking. That's cause and effect. Number 1. The British show that conquered American primetime first. This is the fact that reframes everything else on this list, and it deserves to land with full force. Fireball XL5 was the first British television series ever to debut on American primetime network television. NBC purchased it, scheduled it, and broadcast it to US audiences. And that American premiere came more than 2 weeks before the show aired in the United Kingdom. Read that again. On a major American network, in prime time. This wasn't a late-night slot or a Saturday morning filler block. This was NBC, prime time, American living rooms, 1962. The British invasion in music was still 2 years away, yet Gerry Anderson's puppet spaceship had already crossed the Atlantic and planted itself in the American schedule before most Americans had heard a British accent on their television. It represented a genuine shift in how international television content was understood, valued, and distributed. Proof that quality production could travel without a passport, that good stories and extraordinary craft needed no translation. Every British show that ever found an American audience afterward walked through a door that Fireball XL5 opened. Think about what that chain looks like in practice. Without this moment, the path to every British format that crossed the Atlantic, every co-production deal, every distribution arrangement, every transatlantic pitch meeting runs through different ground. The precedent wasn't just symbolic, it was structural. That's not a footnote in television history. It is television history. And it happened with puppets on strings, miniature sets engineered to a standard that held up under broadcast scrutiny, and a brass theme song that still sounds like launch clearance 60 years later. Bonus fact, the adventure that never officially ended. Here's a bittersweet truth about the show that sent rockets across your imagination. Fireball XL5 ran for 39 episodes and then simply stopped. No grand finale. No climactic battle that concluded the war for Sector 25. No farewell speech from Colonel Zodiac. The series ended the way many children's productions of that era ended, quietly, with the implicit understanding that the stories were ongoing, that somewhere beyond the last frame, the crew was still out there. Serialized conclusions weren't yet the standard expectation. But there's something almost poetic about it, and something honest. The show never promised a destination. It promised a mission, week after week, and it delivered on that promise 39 times without once running short on invention. In the logic of the show's universe, Steve Zodiac and Dr. Venus and Robert the Robot are still out there, still launching from Space City, still detaching Fireball Jr. on some urgent new assignment that nobody ever filmed, still patrolling Sector 25 with the same calm competence they brought to every episode. The adventure didn't end. The cameras just stopped following it. For a generation of kids who needed to believe space was still worth exploring and who didn't yet know that television shows were allowed to say goodbye, that might be exactly the right note to close on. 39 episodes, one invented word. The first British show in American primetime, a robot with feelings, a spaceship that split itself in half, and a space doctor who was always the most qualified person in the room. Fireball XL5 packed more genuine innovation into a single season than most productions manage across an entire run. It did it with puppets on strings, miniature sets engineered to a standard that justified every frame, and a brass-heavy theme song that still sounds like launch clearance. So here's the question worth leaving in the comments. Which fact landed hardest? Was it the NBC primetime bombshell at number 1? The moment Supermarionation got its name? Or did Robert the Robot's surprisingly human emotional life quietly rewire something you didn't expect? Whatever your answer, Colonel Zodiac would simply nod, climb into Fireball Jr., and begin the next mission without ceremony. That was always his style. Safe flying out there.